Right, so this is another review that you can do to get a little extra practice for your Chapter 5 test. It says for numbers 1 and 2 to use this triangle at the right, ABC. I want you to notice that this triangle at the right is a right triangle, which means we can use SOHCAHTOA. You don't need to use law of sines or cosines for this triangle. It says find the exact value, so no decimal estimates for sine of A. Right, so let's look at A. Let me get my highlighter here. Angle A. Sine would be opposite over hypotenuse. This would be my hypotenuse. And I currently don't have my hypotenuse, which means I need to find it. So let me go ahead and find my hypotenuse by using Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared plus 14 squared equals c squared. And I'm going to use my calculator here and take 5 squared plus 14 squared. 5 squared plus 14 squared, and I get 221. And let's see if that's a perfect square or not. It's not, and I can't think of any perfect squares that 221 can be divided by. Let's try 4, 9, 16. I know it can't be divided by 25. About 36. No, it's not looking like any of these are going to work. Let's see, 8 squared would be 64. 9 squared would be 81. Nope, does not look like it's divisible by any perfect squares. So C is simply the square root of 221. Well, now that I know that, I can find the sine, and the sine of A then would be, 14 divided by the square root of 221, and I can't leave that square root there because you can't have square roots in the denominator, so I rationalize the denominator by multiplying by the square root of 221 over the square root of 221. This is simply a giant number 1. And I'm left with 14 times the square root of 221, all divided by 221. That is my final answer. Number 2 asks me to the nearest degree, what is the measure of angle B? Since I'm looking for the measure of an angle, I'm going to do an inverse sine, cosine, or tangent. So I've got to decide whether I want to use sine, cosine, or tangent. I'd really rather not involve the square root of 221, which is the hypotenuse, which takes out sine and cosine. So why don't I do tangent? So the tangent of B would be opposite is 5 over adjacent is 14. So angle B is equal to the inverse tangent of 5/14. I'm going to use my calculator. It says degrees, so I want to make sure my calculator is in degrees. And then I do inverse tangent of 5/14. And I get 19.65. Oh, it says to the nearest degree, so that would be 20 degrees. All right, number 3, find the measure of angle X. This is the angle that I'm looking for, and I have side, side, side. This is the side across from the angle. So I'm going to have to use law of cosines. So I've got 7 squared equals 6 squared, that's what I started to say, plus 10 squared minus 2 times 6 times 10 times the cosine of x. I'm going to use my calculator. I get 49 here. And I've got 6 squared plus 10 squared. Gives me 136 minus 2 times 6 times 10, 120 cosine of x. Remember, I cannot get these together because this is attached to the cosine of x. So I subtract 136 from each side. And I get negative 87 equals negative 120 cosine of x. I'm going to divide those sides by that negative 120. And I get 0.725 equals the cosine of x. Take the inverse of each side. And I get that x equals inverse cosine of 0.725, which is 43.53 degrees. It didn't say what to round to. I'll just go to 2 decimal places. Okay. Let's go to number 4. It says 2 sides of a triangular plot of land. Let's draw my triangular plot of land. Measure 300 and 200 feet. And the angle between these sides is 40. So I have side, angle, side, which always tells me that I'm going to use law of cosines. What is the perimeter of this plot of land? Round to the nearest hundredth. Right, so I need to find this side first, and then I need to add them all up. So I'm going to use law of cosines. So I have x squared equals 300 squared plus 200 squared minus 2 times 300 times 200 times the cosine of 40 degrees. Now remember, since there's no variables here, I can put all of this into my calculator. So I've got 300 squared plus 200 squared minus 2 times 300 times 200 times the cosine of 40. And then I'm going to take the square root of that. I guess I should write that down just so I have it here. Now I take the square root of each side. And I get 195.13. So that is the length of this side. But since it asks for the perimeter, I need to add up these 3 numbers. So I'm going to add 500, because 300 and 200 is 500. And that is my perimeter. 695.13 is my perimeter. Okay, let's look at number 5. It asks for the area of the figure. This is where I'm going to use that formula that area equals 1/2 AB sine of C. So this is my angle and my 2 sides. It has to be side, angle, side. Because this would be side Y. I don't want this side as part of my formula. So area equals, and we put 0.5 times 6 times 7 times the sine of 75 degrees. 0.5 times 6 times 7 times the sine of 75. And I get 20.28. And that would be square, what? Doesn't say. Units squared. Right, number 6. Owners of some land wish to determine the distance from A to B. They began by walking 250 feet directly towards B, but encountered a swamp, so they turn left at a 50-degree angle, which means this is a 130-degree angle there. Went 160 feet and then turn right 63, which means if this is 63, and this is a straight line, 180 minus 63, that's 117, which means I know this angle. So 117 plus 50 is 167. 180 minus 167 means this angle must be 13 degrees. And I can use law of sines because I have all three angles, because I know this information and I need this one. So I've got sine of 13 degrees divided by the side across from it, 160, equals sine of 117 divided by the side across from it. So I cross multiply, and I get 160 times the sine of 117 equals x times the sine of 13. Since I'm solving for x, divide both sides by the sine of 13, and I will get my answer for x. So 160 times the sine of 117 divided by the sine of 13, 633.74. Now, that's the distance here. From A to B, I've got to remember to add another 250. So don't forget to take that and the 633.74 and add them. I'm going to take this answer here and add the other 250, and there's my answer, 883.74, and that would be, I think, feet.